Hey there guys, Robert here, and welcome to episode 5 of RobGioRanks. For this episode, I'm going to be ranking this Astrix album called... He.art? He.art? I really do not know how to pronounce that title because there's a period in between the E and the A, so I'm just going to call it Heart. This is the 4th or 5th full-length studio album from Israeli DJ and record producer Avi Shmeilov, aka Astrix, who also happens to be the second Israeli electronic artist that I've heard of, just only after Infected Mushroom. In fact, I first heard about him a few years ago when I was watching a video from a YouTube channel named Cotton Candy Raves about a beginner's guide to EDM genres, and she mentioned him when she was mentioning artists that you can go check out in the trance genre. And no, that video did not get me into electronic music. Random album title got me into electronic music, remember that. While we're on the topic of the trance genre, the subgenre that Astrix typically operates on is the psychedelic trance subgenre, or the psy-trance subgenre for short. And I've always found it to be a very interesting genre. If I could describe it, I think it would be the music that I would hear on a hallucination drug trip, if that makes any sense. I suck at analogies, for crying out loud. Also, after watching that Cotton Candy Rays video, I did not get around to go check out Astrix, but a few months ago, I finally decided to give his music a spin after seeing this. A fan-made music video for one of his tracks, Deep Jungle Walk, which also happens to be on this very album. So, I gave Heart a listen, and what do I think about it? Well, I actually think this album is really, really great. All 9 of these tracks that you're about to hear in this ranking nailed down that psytrance style of electronic music pretty well here, and I think that should segue us into this ranking proper. Before I go over my ranking, I just want to say that this is all my opinion and you can feel free to either agree or disagree with me. This ranking is not based on popularity, but rather on personal enjoyment and nostalgia. This ranking is not final, and it's possible that it may change depending on my mood. Also, please try to not take my opinion too seriously, and if you think your favorite track from this album is not ranked high enough in my ranking, then that's fine too. Just make your own ranking. So now, without any further ado, let's get started. Kicking things off at number 9, I have placed Agate. Just so you know, I like every track on here, but this had to go at the bottom. I like the intro to this one though. It starts off all promising with all these soft and rumbling ambient pads, and then it starts to build up, and then the drop comes in at the 124 mark. It's a cool one though. I like its bass and the metallic synths that go along with it. I also like the hollow sounding melody that plays at the 432 mark and the chord progression at the 527 mark as well. Oh yeah, and the occasional female vocal sample that says everything in color or something like that. Yeah, it really fits on here too. The reason why it's last though is because I believe it's a bit too similar to Deep Jungle Walk, but even with this in mind, I still pretty much like the atmosphere of this one, even if it's a bit forgettable compared to all the other tracks on here. Nice track nonetheless. Next at number 8, I have placed Heart, the title track, and also the shortest track at just a little over 8 minutes. Yeah, these tracks go on for very long periods of time. They range from 8 to 9 minutes long, and this album even begins with a 13-minute long track. But I'll get to that later on. But about this track, this one is quite good. I like the atmosphere of this one too, especially the intro where you get these very low rumbling soundscapes, which really caught my attention. I also really love these synth arpeggios too, and its overall 6 on the floor type rhythm as well. Also, at around the 430 mark, there's this woman singing in a foreign language. I can't really tell if it's in Hebrew or some other language, but it really fits well with the overall psychedelic atmosphere and it sounds really beautiful. Overall, even though this track nearly fell to dead last on this ranking because I feel like there are other tracks on this album that are better than this one, this won't stop me from saying that this one is really good and is worth listening to. Neat! Next at number 7, I have placed Valley of Stevie. Much like the last 2 tracks, I don't have too much to say about it, and that probably goes for every track on here, but this one is really great. The atmosphere is once again pretty great, and I generally love everything that goes into this track, from the vocal samples to the synth choices. Not to mention that the synth lead in the first half is also pretty catchy too. I also really love the second half, especially with those beautiful female vocals at the 529 mark as per usual. Nearly 6 minutes in though, the synth bass raises up in pitch until the 624 mark where this little arpeggio plays. And then it just lets itself sizzle before the 631 mark where the beat and the bass come in. I got nothing else to say about this one other than this one is really great, so I recommend it. Next at number 6, I have placed Awake the Snake. Another great track on here. I love the chopped up synths that play in the beginning with those little high-pitched vocals that also contrast well with the whole production. I also love the metallic synths that also happen in the drop. At around the 305 mark or so, I noticed that it really started to hit even harder with a bigger bass line, which is so cool. Also thinking about this track now and also thinking about the title of this track, it kind of makes me feel like I'm in a short movie about accidentally waking up the snake and then running away from said snake. Which, thinking about that concept, it makes me think of the SpongeBob episode Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm. Okay, now that would be very ingenious for a music video about this track, I guess. Again, nothing too much to say about it, but this track is also really great. Next, at number 5, I have placed Conquistador, Astrix remix, originally by Juno Reactor. Now, I'm not going to act like I'm a huge on the regular Juno Reactor fan or listener, but I did listen to this remix and the original back to back, and I actually found the remix to be better than the original because 1, I'm a huge sucker for psytrance at this point thanks to this album, and 2, I just found it to be more evocative than the original as well. As always, I love the psychedelic nature of this remix, and I love how the bass is mixed against this hard-hitting beat. I also really like the occasional vocal samples that are scattered throughout this track as well. Overall, I think this is a great remix. If you're a fan of Juno Reactor by any chance and you like the original over this remix, that's completely fine. But for me, I'd say stick with the remix. Next, at number 4, I have placed Alien Turned Human. And yeah, I knew this track was going to be a highlight the moment I first listened to this one. What can I say that I didn't already say? Beautiful atmosphere and sound design, nice synth choices, cool slumping bass, alluring vocal samples, what have you. I also love the inclusion of the sound of a phone dial. Yeah, that was really clever. Also, the majority of this track has a 4 on the floor rhythm, while occasional parts of this track have a 6 on the floor rhythm, which is also brilliant. I also really love the inclusion of marimba melody at the 6:14 mark to give it more of a tropical feel, kind of what the album cover depicts. I know my reasoning seems to be shorter than usual, I'll tell you why at the end, but this one is an awesome track. Next, at number 3, I have placed Sapana. And here we have another highlight on the album. I love the arpeggiated synths that happen in the beginning, and as always, I love the thumping bass, and the woo vocal samples are really cool. I also really love that pitch wavering sound that comes in at the 258 mark, along with occasional laser sounds thrown in there for good measure. But the reason why this track made into my top 3 is because of that hard-hitting analog synth bass that starts to come in at the 326 mark. And it just made the track have a little more oomph and edge to it than some of the tracks we heard before. Another reason why this track made it so high on the rankings is because of what happens at the 522 mark, where it goes from your typical hard-hitting psytrance track that you may expect out of an album like this to this slow acoustic drum beats, with a really cool bass and a really beautiful male voice sample to accompany it, as well as some beautiful synth pads to back it up. Now that is a true moment on this album. Therefore, this one is just plain excellent, and I recommend this a lot. Nothing more to add there, so awesome track. Next, at number 2, I have placed Shamanic Tales. And here we have the opener to this whole album, the 13-minute long journey that is Shamanic Tales. And I think I'll have quite a bit to say about it compared to all the other tracks on the album. This track begins with the animal noises that you may hear in the tropical rainforest, and a woman singing in a foreign language. Then the atmosphere slowly becomes more vast with some rumbling ambient soundscapes and the sound of a heart beating. Then the beat starts to come in at around the 223 mark, except by then it has a slower tempo than usual. And then by the 239 mark, shit really starts to go down, containing a great bass line and some really cool elements that go with it. There are also some really cool chopped up vocal samples too in some parts. While we're on the topic of vocal samples, there are also some chipmunk sounding vocals that play around the 519 mark. Then at the 535 mark, phenomenal guitar and bongo playing starts to come in to give it more of a salsa-ish feel. And by then I was just like, okay. At the 647 mark, there's this other female vocal sample which sounds so perfect, which is followed by some more ambient soundscapes and more bongo playing that happens at the 743 mark. At the 831 mark though, the song starts to increase in tempo until the 901 mark, until it becomes your typical upbeat psytrance tune that you would expect out of Astrix. It's seriously the only track on the album that increases in tempo at some point, which is absolutely brilliant. Also by then, we get some more fantastic synth choices in side tracks, with one of those choices sounding all robotic from the 901 mark to the 928 mark. Then at around the 11-minute mark, we start to return back to that beautiful and serene nature sounding atmosphere that we've all come to hear at the beginning of this track. And then towards the end, there's this male vocal sample repeating something in Spanish or something. Yeah, I told you I had quite a bit to say about it. There is a reason for that, and that is because it's quite a trip to get through. I definitely think its 13-minute length is very well justified, because it utilized that time to contain a wide variety of interesting soundscapes, synth choices, sidetracks, and overall vibes. I got nothing else to say. This is just a phenomenal track from start to finish. Keep in mind that even though that I had so much to say about this track, it's only at number 2. So, what could possibly top this ranking? Let's find out right now. And finally, at number 1, I have placed Deep Jungle Walk. Okay, now this may very well be my favorite psytrance track of all time. And it's also by miles Astrix's most popular track ever, and there is definitely a reason for that. Just where do I begin with this? Beautiful nature-like soundscapes, awesome beat, awesome bass, awesome synth choices. Again, what have you? I also love how there's a male vocal sample that goes, "They speak visions from our own lives." I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Vocal samples like this sound like the person has so much wisdom. And I'm definitely a sucker for those kind of inspirational vocal samples. Other things that I can really point out are at the 317 mark, there's this really cool synth arpeggio, and at the 330 mark, there's the sound of a didgeridoo, and that's really amazing. The 447 mark is where things get absolutely crazy, with the synth bass going absolutely hard AF. There's also this lyric that goes, "Deep jungle tribe, mushroom, deep jungle tribe, boom, deep jungle tribe, shalom, deep jungle tribe now," or whatever that lyric be saying. You know, it's stupidly fun to sing along to, you know? So, overall, words cannot describe how much I adored this track. I'm happy that this was my introduction to Astrix, because this track actually caused me to open my mind up to the world of psytrance. If I hadn't seen that fan-made music video for this track, which I'll link to in the description down below, I wouldn't be able to be a fan of the subgenre and also be a fan of Astrix in general. So yeah, this track is awesome. Plain and simple. One of my favorite tracks of all time. Absolutely love this. So yeah, that was He.art, and like I said before, I think this album is really, really great. If I can come up with one minor con for this project though, it's that none of the tracks feel like they are any different from each other. I mean, all 9 of these tracks do have the same overall psychedelic sound and nature, which is why my reasonings for most of these tracks were kinda short. But there are albums like Robert Miles' Dreamland, where it retains the same overall sound for every track, but it never gets sick of its sound. And this very album over here is one of them. Its lowest points like Agate and the title track are good, but a little more on the forgettable side. But my top 2, Shamanic Tales and Deep Jungle Walk, have points so high that both of these tracks at this point are among my favorite tracks of all time. This is another one of those albums where I never disliked a single track. All of these tracks have a very interesting sound that they all operate on to make you feel like that you're mentally going on a trip. I can even go as far as to say that these tracks only exist to feel like your brain is expanding, and that is very special. So yeah, I don't think I have any more praises to sing about this album, so I'm just gonna go on ahead and give it a very decent 8.5 out of 10. Go check it out. It's a great album. So what do you think about He.art? If you have any thoughts on it, then I suggest leaving it down in the comment section below. The Spotify link to this album will also be linked in the description down below if you want to give this album a listen. If you have any projects you want me to rank next, feel free to leave your suggestions and recommendations in the comments. Also, if you're interested in being a part of Season 1 of RobGio Mega Collabs, which is on Deadmau5, there is a form for one of his albums in the description down below. The form will be closing in 2 days' time. Also, be sure to like this video, share it around with your friends if you want to, and leave a comment down below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe as we're on the road to 6,000 subscribers. That's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye, guys!